So along those lines, and I'm not asking for you to give me specifics, but how did you break down the reward portion of the conversation versus the risk version of the conversation, right? So like who we've both put time into the project. How do you figure out who gets what?
I'm wondering if I should answer that question. I mean, I want to answer that question.
Well, let me just say, is it a straight up split 50-50? Or is there some other?
So basically, I just said I'm not sure I should answer that question. Then you go, well, so let me just fish until I get the answer I'm looking for.
Well, see, no. See, so sometimes when you ask somebody, like, you want to know how much money they make a year, you don't ask them for the exact amount. You just say, is it somewhere between, or is it greater than, or less than, right? You just give them a gray area to answer within. I was trying to give you a gray area.
I'm going to answer your question, but before I answer your question with a number, I'm going to say that Mike actually approached me. So back when I might have mentioned something on the show about looking for partners, and I had some folks approach me, and I kind of said, no, that's not really what I meant. But then Mike came to me, and Mike has a catalog. If you don't know who Mike is, first of all, go to cravecreative.com. He has got a humongous catalog. Mike is a great example of somebody who puts his mind to it and gets something done. So he's a good example of somebody who can get a game done. He settles on it, he does it. It's like a fait accompli. If he starts on the game gets done. So Mike came to me and he said, hey, I saw you on the show and you talked about partnering, and I'm not sure if you're really interested or not. And we had a little talk, and it was very tentative. He was tentative. He wasn't sure if it was a good idea, and I was tentative. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea. Not because, of any particular warning signs, but just because we both knew that, get the right words in the right order, we both knew that these kind of things can go haywire or south really quickly, right?
Yeah.
He didn't know me. I didn't know him.
Yeah, the divorce rate is very high.
Yeah, the divorce rate on these kinds of combinations is very high. Yes, and the settlement out of court is terrible. So anyways.
And half a dog isn't any good, I'm telling you.
The dog's never going to be the same again, I'm telling you. But finally we agreed that we would work on a project together as an experiment. And then we chose this project thinking it would be quick.
So then we wrote Angry Birds.
Yeah, then we wrote Angry Birds. But then we said what we're going to do this time around, and perhaps later, is that we will just simply split it 50-50. We'll make this thing as simple as possible. We will find a way to balance the cost so that we're each holding a piece of that pie. And then we will simply call it 50-50 because that's just the easiest way to do it. Anybody can do 50-50 math. So the other thing we had to decide is who gets to own the game. Because when you distribute a game, only one person can distribute the game. Now I worked with somebody else once and it didn't go very well, and I don't want to elaborate on that or make anybody feel bad, but one of the difficulties that we encountered was distribution. In point of fact, if you're going to own a property, any kind of property, and what I mean by this is intellectual. So this is a game, it's intellectual property, it's very distinctive. You can't distribute it under two different ownerships. We couldn't say like, well, Mike will do it under Amazon and I'll do it on Google Play and iOS or something like that. That just wouldn't work.
And setting up a separate entity in order to accomplish that is complicated and expensive.
Yeah. We're doing good on not talking about the shooter thing today, but I think this is a good discussion because people are probably going to be very curious about working in teams. So we decided 50-50, and Mike was very gracious and said that, hey, why don't you go ahead and take the first game and distribute it? And then we said what we would do after that is tentatively do a 50-50, a flip-flop. So the next game Mike would do. Now that may not actually turn out to be true. It all depends that we realized later that was not necessarily a great idea. It's more about the property. If the property makes more sense for one person to distribute than another, because they've already got games like that in their catalog or something, then you want to go with them, because there's an association value there too.
So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, you don't know which game is going to be a hit, right? So
yeah. Well, not just that, but let's say you've got 10 puzzle games in your catalog, and I've got 10 shooters, and then we make a RPG. Whose catalog do you think would be most appropriate? Probably the shooter, right? More likely. But if we did shooter together, then definitely the shooters would go in my catalog because it just makes sense. Unless, of course, maybe there's other factors too. Mike's probably got a lot more customers than I do for my games, so maybe he's got more eyeballs. But now we're working this stuff out as we go, to be honest. But those are the kind of thoughts that we have and the things we've discussed.
Well, but ownership, branding, distribution and marketing. I mean, these are all topics that everybody has to deal with, whether they're working by themselves or in a team. And then when they partner with somebody or joint venture with somebody, work on a project with somebody, it's certainly a factor because you have to figure out at some point, whose family are you going to go visit for Christmas? I mean, something.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to say too is we already said this, that working with somebody else has all kinds of benefits, right?
Yeah.
One of the benefits for me about working with Mike is that I'm really strong technically, but I'm terrible with other aspects of this. And one of the aspects I'm terrible with is marketing. I got no clue. I know the right words to say, and I know the topics and interesting articles to read, but when it comes to rubber meeting the road or applying that knowledge, not so much. Mike, on the other hand, he's got a whole recipe. He's got a strategy. He not only has the information, he's got a strategy, which is amazing to me. So we had a talk like a couple weeks ago, and he laid out his strategy. I'm like, really? That's what I was thinking. I don't think I was quite as flabbergasted at the moment, but I was like, wow. Okay, you're definitely doing that part.
So he put some thought into it for sure. Huh? That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Oh, have you seen our site? He did this.
We saw it last time, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, just show it to us. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about here. Is if I could type, it would already be up. I gotta remember the URL. So speaking of marketing, Mike did all this. I mean, he just put all this together, lickety split. I mean, he's got the whole thing laid out with the discussion about the game and how to play it, the privacy page, the home page with the banner. It's just like, wow. You don't get this kind of treatment when you do games on my site. My site's just like, go to my site, look for my games page, man. It's good.
Right. So this is good.
I know I'm giving all kinds of laurels to Mike here, but I really should because he did a wonderful job on all of the aspects of it. But you know what?
What you're talking about? What you're talking about is leveraging the strengths of the individual.
Yes.
So that's important.
So I know people who are tuning in are like, okay, good. Your game is exciting. Good luck to you. Mike is awesome. You're awesome. Now show us the game already. The other game. The one we came here to learn how to make.
Well, one thing before we go to that, I'm going to switch over here to screen share and show you that Border Leap. I don't know if you guys have seen their Word2 game.
Yeah, I've been watching this.
What's that? You've been watching it?
Yeah, I've been tracking this.
So they're in the App Store, in Apple's App Store for best new games, and I've downloaded it's like a $2.99 game. I've downloaded it and played it, and it's very good. Nate at Border Leap does a great job of design. It's always very simplistic. Clean is another word for it. It's always very intuitive, and they've got talking about marketing and stuff like that. He always does great stuff like the videos and the screenshots and things just to kind of get you excited. And when you open the app, it pulses at you and kind of draws you in to play it and stuff like that. And so they've got a whole back catalog of games you can find on their site over at borderleap.com. I just wanted to mention that because that's another Corona game that you may not know is made with Corona, but just like Hapico. I don't know how to say it, but
Hapico. You say Hapico.
Hapico. I think it's Hapico. It was featured by Apple recently, up in the top list there, and Pop the Lock was featured by Apple, and these are all Corona-made games that there's no branding on them to know that, but they are, and so anyway, go check out Word2. It's a fun game. I'll put a link in the show notes.
Roger Rabbit.
Okay. We got about 20 minutes left.
Sure, yeah. Well, we can cruise through this. No problem. Let me get my code over here so we can see
Well,
it.
whatever we don't cover today, let's just slide